welcome to today's presentation for the Institution of Agricultural Engineers Annual Conference 2020, admittedly in a slightly different format with a pre-recorded presentation. I am your host for the day, Andy Newbold, editor of the institution's magazine Landwards, and I'm joined today by John Shropshire. Now, John is the chairman of G's Fresh, a family farming business growing salads and veg. And I think if you're not aware of G's Fresh, you should be, but you certainly will know a lot more about them by the end of this presentation. So, John, thank you for giving us your time today, and I'm going to hand over to you now.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Andy, and thank you, everybody, for this opportunity to talk to the institution. What I'm going to do for a start is give a little bit of an introduction to G's and what we're about, what we're aiming to achieve. And then I'm going to talk about the challenges and the opportunities of the future that we see for the industry as a whole and for G's in particular. So, just going straight in, this business was actually founded by my father. He was the youngest of four sons, and the family had been in farming and butchering. He had to find his own way in the world, and he moved to the Eastern Counties and Fens at a young age and started growing celery in the 1950s. And now we've got my brother and I, and various sisters have been involved in the business, but my brother and I, and then our children as well, are involved. So my father was actually a visionary, and he was always looking to the future. And actually, a particular interest to this institution is actually his interest in designing machinery, and we've actually been quite famous for designing and building machinery. In fact, we have a machinery manufacturing business in Spain, and there's a photograph here of him actually a television program about a straw planter that he built for controlling wind erosion in the Fens in the 1970s. It says. Some fast facts about the business, $500 million turnover, but well over 1 billion packs of produce per year, over 8,000 employees, half of whom are seasonal, and that gives its own problems, which I'll come back to later. We grow over 13,000 hectares of salads and vegetables. We've got wheat, maize, potatoes and other crops in addition to that. We work with other farmers, particularly in the UK, through a growers cooperative called Cheese Growers. Our capital expenditure has been over 200 million in the last 10 years, and we supply major retailers across Europe and the USA. So we have our promise, which is to supply quality fresh produce that delights our customers every day. We are the original just-in-time business. We invented just-in-time operations in the early 1980s. And our customers expect 99.95% service levels every single day. And often our orders are not received until midday of the day of delivery. Our aim, our philosophy is about being at the forefront of the industry in everything we do. So we have 5 words that sum up our values, and the first and most important for me is the word trust, because in the industry we're in the food industry, there's an awful lot of opportunities to cut corners and basically cheat. So we are aiming to do everything to the very highest standards, and then absolutely have the certainty and the confidence of our customers. But also trust is about the people employed in the business, stakeholders, our suppliers, and our partner growers and operators that we work with. So we're farming in the UK, Poland, and the Czech Republic for summer production, and then in Spain and Senegal for the winter, because we set out to supply our customers all the year round. And that was my father being a visionary. He set that up in the mid-80s. In the Fens, we have the farming operation run by my middle son, Charles. And this is fenland soils, the peat. A lot of the peat is gone now. That field you can see in the picture is actually not peat. It's just a silty clay of the subsoil that's left. And quite a lot of the land we farm is looking like that. So other farmers in the cooperative, there's Greens of Soham, a famous farming company, and here they've got some very fantastic beetroot harvesting equipment, and you can see the cathedral in the background. They're probably one of the biggest beetroot, red beet growers in the world. Other farmers, we've got Tim Young in Norfolk, James Foskett, a big farmer in Suffolk as well, growing onions for us and other crops as well. And we've got Sandfields Farms, which is a partnership between our family and Derek Wilkinson, farming over in Worcestershire, being the biggest spring onion grower, but also we're growing legumes and asparagus as well over there. So that's where the crops are split up between. We have about 6,500 hectares in the UK of salads and veg, over 6,000 in Spain, and then Czech, Senegal and Poland are a bit smaller. We're a fully vertically integrated business, but the one thing we don't do is produce our own seed. We produce everything from transplant through to the customer. We have made the decision not to develop our own varieties and produce our own seed. And because we don't do that, we are actually one of the biggest customers for varieties of the crops we grow in the world, because the big major producers in the USA tend to produce their own varieties and their own seeds. So all the major seed breeders come to us as first choice because we're the biggest customer of seed, and that's a strategic decision that we took many years ago. So we turn to Spain now. In Spain, on the top right-hand corner of the picture, you've got David Abram. He went there with my father 34 years ago and actually started a farming operation, 20 hectares up in the hills. And now he's still very much involved in the business. And my eldest son, Guy, is the CEO of Spain, and they're working together running that major operation. And just a nice view across one of the valleys and seeing 5 of our celery rigs harvesting celery in the field, packing it in the field, ready for the customer, ready to be delivered to a supermarket depot, whether it's in Britain, Germany, Scandinavia. And that's the finished article packed in the field with the date code and everything on it. You can just see the Mediterranean in the background, as this is the depths of winter in the middle of January. So turning now to Senegal, we're in the north of Senegal, and it's a very barren area, but we're near a very big lake. So there's lots of water, there's lots of land, and there are an awful lot of people with no work. So you can see the center pivots there in the picture. And when we got there, actually, that's what we found, just absolute barren, overgrazed landscape. And basically, we have built everything there. There's no electricity. We make our own bricks and breeze blocks, make our own concrete, and we have built a whole operation there. And we're employing about 1,000 people. So the key to it is the water, and we've got a 5-kilometre long, very big canal that moves the water through the farms. And for every hectare of land that we bring into production for ourselves, we have to bring a hectare in for the neighbouring farmers, the smallholder farmers who were subsistence farming on the edge of the lake. They're now farming sort of 10, 50, 60 hectares of crops each, supplied through by this canal for the water. And that's how it's looking. Centre pivots, as I said earlier, the 2 main crops are spring onions and radish. So, what are the challenges of the future, and what have we got to be concerned about, and what are we working on? Well, weather is an issue, and weather is likely with climate change to get more extreme. You can see on the left there, there's lettuce. I mean, we had more frost in May this year than we'd had through the whole of the winter. We had some very severe frosts in the UK that caused a lot of damage to our lettuce crops. And then, of course, very big rain events. That photograph is actually from Spain. So we're officially farming in a desert in the Murcia region. It's officially a desert, but we get very large rains all in one go. And we had 2 of those last winter. So we've got to be more resilient and more able to cope with these extreme weather events. And while we're doing all that, we're having to cope with Brexit. And still, we don't know what Brexit looks like. We've been over 4 years worrying about Brexit, but I think in the next few weeks, we're probably going to find out. But we've done a lot of work to prepare for whatever is thrown at us. The other issue for us is that in our industry, prices do not increase. And you can see the bottom purple line there. That's the return we get for our iceberg. It goes back many years, over 25 years, and then the costs of all the inputs above it. So you can see we're in an industry familiar to all farmers, because you look at all crops, whether it's wheat, potatoes, sugar beet, all crops have a similar sort of pattern. So we have to get more efficient every year to cope with this and actually survive and make a profit. So what's happening in the marketplace? What are the challenges with our customers? Well, this is our view about what's going to happen. We've suddenly seen COVID-19 affect the marketplace dramatically. And the online shopping has increased, doubled in the last few months. And we do see that continuing. So we see online continue to be more and more important. And that's going to continue to impact on supermarkets and hypermarkets. And we're going to still see a little bit more growth in the convenience stores, and inevitably the discounters are going to keep taking market share. So this is a developing market, and we need to be ready for that because it does have implications for us. So the pandemic, COVID-19, well, we've put a lot of processes in. We've spent an awful lot of money on processes, but also in terms of engineering solutions to actually try and protect people in the workplace where they cannot be 2 meters apart. You can see perspex sheets there, or just polythene sheets. And there's many things we've done. For example, our hostels. We broke up our hostels. In 2 weeks in April, we created 3 new hostel sites in Cambridgeshire and spent over £250,000 just setting them up so that we could break up the teams and isolate certain teams as well. And we had a period then at the beginning of the season where actually people from Romania and Bulgaria, which we'd been relying on for many years, were not able to come to the UK to harvest our lettuce crops. So we actually recruited over 500 British people to come and help us with the harvest. And this worked really well. It's the first time we'd had British people in the fields since the 1980s. So it worked really well, got us over the problem when a lot of them went back to their jobs or went back to college or went back just to have a holiday or left to have a holiday. We actually then were able to bring people from Eastern and Central Europe. So actually, it's worked pretty well for us this year. It was a bit of a worry at the beginning, but it has worked pretty well. The lessons learned. Well, in terms of the pandemic, we've got to be absolutely on top of it. And, we've got the mental health issues of the people. We've got to worry about the people who are actually frightened to come to work. And we've got to actually support them and give them the confidence. And also our customers as well are worried about whether we're, how well we're coping. Several food factories have been shut down in the UK. So putting in the procedures, the health checks, and the prevention is a key part of what we've been doing. And we have spent a lot of money on this. And by the time this comes out in November, we might have had a big outbreak and we might have had a problem. So I don't want to tempt fate, but we are doing an awful lot to try and reduce the impact and the risk of it. So other challenges now, I think that the pandemic is inevitably going to cause a recession. So there are going to be a lot of people out of work, and there are going to be people left with less money in their pockets. And the spending on food always gets hit. We were actually amazed in 2008 how spending on food basically was hit by the recession. People spent less money on food, even though there was food inflation. So we are concerned about the impact it's going to have on our products we sell. I mean, we sell a lot of organic products that are sold at a premium, and that could impact those products really quite severely. But we will see it. We're monitoring it very, very closely, looking at the Kantar data, looking at our own sales figures every week, and really trying to understand what the pattern's going to look like in the future. And we've still got Brexit. So Brexit is something we're working on. We talked earlier about just-in-time deliveries. We actually, for the last several years, have been delivering direct from our Spanish fields via a vacuum cooler, of course, but direct from the field, finished goods with the date on it, direct to the supermarket depots. And when you're talking about 7,500 lorries a year coming through from Spain that we are managing, we don't want those being held up, because with direct deliveries, we've got to work to an exact pattern and hit the deadlines. So we are concerned about anything that will hold those lorries up, and it's all the paperwork administration, and we're putting in processes now, designing computer programs to actually help us mechanize a lot of the work that might have to be done come January. There's also the issue with Brexit about, where this has been in the media a lot recently. Are we going to work to the same, standards as Europe, and yet we're going to import products from around the world that are grown or reared to lower standards? The whole chlorinated chicken issue that you're all familiar with, hormone-treated beef. So, there are going to be impacts, but actually generally in the fresh produce industry, we're not too worried about that, because fresh produce from outside the EU doesn't really stack up because of the haulage distribution costs, so the freight costs. So we're not too worried about the impact of that on us, but certainly Brexit is going to mean a change. I think companies like ours that can cope with all the supply chain disruption that's likely to be caused are likely to benefit, I have to say, from any disruption caused by Brexit. So the other issue is carbon and climate change. And farming in the fens, believe it or not, we're right in the middle of all of this, because we're actually farming in a peat soil, which is organic matter, which is being, since the day it was drained, a lot of it 300 years ago, the soil is being eaten up by flora and fauna, and the result of that is carbon dioxide is being emitted into the atmosphere to the tune of possibly millions of tons a year. Now, we have to have a whole program to actually mitigate that. But one of the first things, of course, we've got to do is actually get an accurate number, because it isn't clear just how much carbon dioxide is being emitted, because a lot of the figures are out of date. And as you can see in the bottom picture there, you can see the ditch profile. That ditch has been done out because the peat has shrunk. The ditch then needs to be deeper. And you can see that there's not a lot of peat left in that field. But actually, that is some of our deepest peat. And I'll show you a picture of a different, in a minute, of a different field where there's no peat left at all. In fact, the majority of the fens, the peat is completely gone. So we need an accurate number. We're working on that. We need to manage our farm in a more sustainable way. And my middle son Charles has introduced regenerative agriculture into the farms. So green cover crops, minimum tillage, reduced use of fertilizers, incorporating an AD plant and a digestate, and from that into a whole farm approach. And then we've got wildlife corridors, wildlife meadows, and sustainable ditch and waterway management. One of the ways we're doing that is actually digging the ditches deeper, making them bigger, as you can see in the picture. And then we can actually hold the water at the same level all the year round. And then that's much better for wildlife, because each ditch is a wildlife corridor and it's a fantastic habitat. You can see as well, actually, that field has been drained. A lot of the fens were drained on an FHDS scheme about 40 years ago. The government gave grant aid to the tune of 60%, and all the fens were drained. And now we are redraining all our land, because good drainage is absolutely critical if you want to have farm in the most effective way, through yield and also the environmental impact on our fields. So we've invested millions of pounds in extra drainage with no grant aid at all in the last few years. My brother actually farms a bit of deeper peat, and there's a small pocket of deep peat left over in Norfolk. And he introduced land levelling about 30 years ago, and he controls his water table. And you can just see in that picture in the bottom right corner, a hole that's been dug in that crop of Chinese cabbage, and the water level at about 65 centimetres is glistening away, and that's what's irrigating the crop. But it's also conserving the peat, because if you can hold the water table higher, you can conserve the peat, and he's holding the water tables at a much higher level than he would be if the fields were not levelled. So, future opportunities. Well, mechanisation. There might be people available. I think it's likely that there'll be going to be people available. It's possible or not, but I think it's likely we'll have people available. But they're going to get more expensive. There's no doubt about that. The minimum wage keeps increasing. And we are investing a very large amount of money every year in trying to mechanise our operations. But you will all know better than I do that this is not going to happen very, very quickly. It requires an enormous amount of money, and it requires an enormous amount of expertise. I mean, this picture is a celery harvesting rig, and we've been several years in developing this celery harvester. The other way we can actually get more efficient and be more efficient, reduce food waste and improve on our impact on the environment, is to grow crops more efficiently through better programming and better crop forecasting. And we've had a program of work going back now about 5 years called IceCam. And IceCam is about actually using big data sets to actually work with, analyse the weather and the crop growth to actually model out the planting programs and then the harvesting plan from that. And we've significantly improved the efficiency of what we do, having less product when there's a crop flush, and more product when there's a shortage, then enables us to actually grow less crop overall to still fulfill our programs and orders from our customers. And you'll all be familiar with the work we're doing with drones and aircraft, and this is working with IceCam as well to actually map out the performance of each field and the efficiency of planting, and then do better crop forecasting to manage our harvesting better. So switching then to the other issue is the other opportunity for the industry. I feel very passionately about this one. Training, skills and training in agriculture in Britain, we are severely lagging behind other countries in the world. And this slide just basically compares us to other countries in Europe, but the same would be if we compared ourselves to Canada, America, USA, to New Zealand, Australia, because we've done the research, we know this. So this shows that we're doing about half as much training as other European northern countries in agriculture. And you can see how our productivity is lagging behind. I mean, most of you will be familiar with this issue. So what we're heavily involved in is trying to persuade the entire industry and working with organizations like yourselves to actually, and the government, to actually set up a institute, you call it, or we're actually proposing that we have an Institute of Agriculture and Horticulture, which actually then professionalizes our industry, the growing and farming industry, and raises the status of the people working in it. You get better entrance, people are better trained, and we raise the status of the people that actually do the work, rather than currently, to me, there's too much status attached to the people that own the businesses and particularly own the land. So, very passionate about this subject. We've got to professionalize the industry and take ourselves forward to actually meet the challenges of Brexit and all the future challenges of agriculture, and to do a better job for the environment. So the other big opportunity for us should be health. And it's clear with COVID-19, people who lead a healthy lifestyle are much less at risk from COVID-19. And a healthy lifestyle is a lot about eat what we eat, and we're absolutely in the sweet spot. But the problem is, everybody's known this for a long time, and actually, really, people are not eating much more salads and veg than they were 20 years ago. So we've not yet had an impact on it, but we mustn't give up on this one. This should be our best opportunity. And one of the ways of doing that is to actually make our products more convenient. So we've done it and make them more exciting and more interesting. We've done a lot of work on beetroot, and we've taken that whole concept to the USA as well as into Europe. And we're working with snack packs with big brands like Philadelphia, where we can actually then promote the product and get children maybe and people eating them as a snack. So quite a bit of work in that area. That is an opportunity for us. And exports, why can't we export to the Eastern United States? We currently import salads from the USA. We do it at times of shortage, no problem. But the USA does not allow us to export beetroot, celery, spring onions, or radish to their country because they've got some spurious rules, phytosanitary restrictions. So we are pushing the government to not forget our relatively small industry, because all the press is full of chlorinated chicken, but the USA is incredibly protectionist. So we're working very, very hard to actually enable us to do that, because I think it's a real opportunity for us. And further automation. This is a celery rig in Spain. And one of the things we've done over the last few years is take some really sophisticated packing equipment. That's a flow wrapper on a rig in the field. And actually the thing you can't see very well in that picture is a Markham printer there. And that actually is the most efficient thing on the machine. It was the most difficult thing to get right in a field situation, to actually do all the printing in the field and saving the labor, putting the labels on, and all the logistics of getting the labels down to the field. So we've done a lot of work on that. I showed you the picture earlier of the celery harvester. So bringing those two together, for example, and then we can be a highly automated operation in the field, big opportunity for us. We're also on planting, looking at reducing the amount of peat we use. This is another environmental issue for us. And we've got a system called Plant Tape, which uses 90% less peat, and it's fully automated. So this is a Plant Tape planter that we've retrofitted onto a Maruca. and for planting little gem, and that's working extremely well in the field. The other thing, of course, is weeds. We're growing more and more organics, and we're having, on the conventional cropping, we've got less and less chemicals available to us as we lose certain chemistry. So this is one of the biggest things that needs to be tackled, really, for us. And there's quite a lot of work going on worldwide, and many of you will be probably even involved in it, let alone know about it. So this is a really exciting area, and we're really looking forward to the opportunities that come from this. And, you know, over the last 8 years, you can see here there's some spending. You know, this is the amount of money that we're spending on investment, and this is not a high margin business. We don't have high margins, so this has been a big investment for us. And over the last 20 so years, we've actually had grant aid from the EU for the fruit and vegetable industry, and a lot of this investment has been grant aided by the EU. So it's really important for us, and if anything, from Brexit, the biggest threat to us would be the government stopping the grant aid for this sort of investment. So it's really important to us that the grant aid continues, and we can continue to invest and innovate and take our products forward, but also our equipment and machinery, and meet the challenges of the future. So in terms of the sustainability of what we do and our products, we've got four main corners of our plan, and we are working on a number of UN targets. And I've talked a bit about the environment. You know, peat is a big issue for us, but there's also a water issue of water. We use a heck of a lot of water on the farms, as you can imagine, so that's a big issue. And we've got, through our products, there's the food waste issue, and we've got the health of our products, so the healthy nutrient content of our products, and the eating quality, getting more people to eat more healthy food. And then we've got the community, working in the community, and through charity programs and what have you, we impact a lot on our community, and it's really, really important that we really engage with our community to actually sell the good things we do in our industry, because we get an awful lot of bad publicity. You know, farmers generally, produce companies, can soon get a lot of bad publicity. So selling the good things we do and working closely with the community is really important. And then, of course, people. The whole people issue. I talked earlier about the industry, the food industry, and how the ethical trading issue is really top of our agenda to actually make sure that people are treated well. With a lot of itinerant workers, this is a really big issue. So if we go to Spain, we can see, because we are in a very controversial area there in near the Mar Menor, there are pollution issues with the farmers, and we've introduced over the last few years substantial new programs, actually planting miles and miles of hedges. We've put wildlife habitat in and cover crops we're growing, and this is all new to that area. You know, that area was not doing any of that a few years ago. So there's a lot of work going on there. And then in the UK, I talked earlier, I just touched on it earlier, about my middle son has introduced a regenerative agriculture program, and it's based on a whole farm approach. And the AD plant is actually very much a part of that. Maize being extremely good in our rotation, and then the digestate coming out extremely good for the soil. So there's a lot of work going on into this whole program. And environmental work is something that's going to be actually a business for us. It seems that subsidies for agriculture are going to probably end, but we are going to be paid for this sort of thing. So we're well placed to be in a good position for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of my talk, and I've enjoyed talking to you. It's been a bit of a rattle through G's, and I'm ready to take questions, or my youngest son Henry is going to be with you to take questions as appropriate.
That was absolutely fantastic, John. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions if you've got a moment
Yes.
to indulge me. And I'll put you on the spot with a technical one, and you can say it's deeply unfair. But I just wondered, how quickly can a lettuce leave the field and be with the customer, typically?
Well, certainly 24 hours is what we aim for, is the longest. But the shortage could easily be 6 hours in the UK. Now, Spain is going, you've got to add 3 days to that.
Yeah, because of the road
transport. So Spain will be that plus 3, because we've got to actually, the journey from Spain on a lorry takes 3 days.
Yeah. So it's going to become mission critical with Brexit, is ensuring that the wagons keep running, isn't it? Given the way the supply chain works. One of the things I also want to touch on, your idea about an institute for agriculture and horticulture. I think the Institution of Agricultural Engineers would echo your sentiments regarding the desire and the need for ever increasing professionalism in agriculture. You know, it's a business and it's a serious job at every level, you know, and we exist as a professional body to encourage people to be the best they can be as agricultural engineers. And I think, you know, the same should be true and is becoming more true in production agriculture. So we would absolutely echo that. I've got a load of questions, but I'm going to hold them for now, John, but because we've taken enough of your time. But just to say, on behalf of myself and on behalf of the Institution of Agricultural Engineers, thank you very much for taking part in our conference this year. And we really appreciate an insight into the business, the challenges, and how you've risen to those challenges, and some of the things on the horizon as well, because I think, you know, you may not view yourself as an agricultural engineer, but certainly you presented to us an awful lot of very exciting agricultural engineering today across a very wide spectrum within your business, and it's great. So thank you for that, John.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome.